Now, Africa's second largest oil producer, Angola, is quitting the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries after disagreements over its production quota. This decision comes after the Saudi-led producer group essentially lowered Angola's oil output target to about 1.11 million barrels a day as part of a series of cuts to help prop up oil prices around the world. Following that announcement, Brent futures actually fell by about 1.8% to $78.28 a barrel on Thursday. The U.S. benchmark, WTI crude, fell by 2% to $72.69 a barrel. I should point out, and you'll see this a little later in the hour, those prices have essentially a bit recovered in today's session. Now, without Angola, OPEC countries will produce roughly 27 million barrels of crude per day. That's about 27% of global supply. And yes, Angola is a relatively small player in OPEC in the larger scheme of things. It accounted for about 4% of their total output. But the country's departure does raise some interesting questions. So let's dig a little deeper into those questions. Patrick Obath is an oil industry consultant. He's got decades of experience in the energy sector, including stints running downstream operations at Royal Dutch Shell operations here in East Africa. He's joining us now from the city of Kisumu. Thank you for your time this evening, Mr. Obath. So let's look at Angola's oil output, right? For most of this year, 2021, 2022, it really hasn't gone over 1.2 million barrels a day. And that's pretty much in line with, the quota that had been given by OPEC. So from their perspective, why is this problematic?
I think the key thing is that Angola has been looking for investments to increase the output of its oil. But it's also on the side a very large gas producer, and with the changes in the climate change agreements and so forth, gas is being seen as a big transition fuel. Now, the biggest investor in terms of the oil industry, but also outside the oil industry, in fact, is China. And China and OPEC are also working try and reduce the amount of oil being produced. So you can see that in a way, Angola is caught between a rock and a hard place, with China being its major investor, and it has a lot of debt to China, but also China dallying with OPEC. So I think that's a key problem that Angola has, and I think by leaving OPEC, it means that it is now open to having a direct conversation with China without taking OPEC into consideration.
Right then. Angola, pretty much like Nigeria, this is a country that used to be able to pump 2 million barrels of crude a day. I remember looking at the production numbers back in the heady days when Brent crude was trading at almost $150 a barrel. There's a lot of money sloshing around. Oil demand has gone up, but Angola's output has just been in steady decline. Right, since then. What went wrong?
There hasn't been a lot of investment in Angola. That is the problem. They've been basically getting a lot of oil out and investing in the country, but also getting more and more debt. And as the oil is being used more to pay debt rather than to increase the amount of oil that is producing. So I think that is what really has caught Angola, and their production has plateaued over that period, without additional investments in the country. And so what they need to do is basically get out of where they are and see whether they can attract investments from China now into other areas. So I think that's what I was saying. They're caught between a rock and a hard place, and their production has plateaued, but they have not had investments in the oil industry, at least for crude oil, over the last 87 years.
And I want to actually wrap up with that rock hard place metaphor that you're actually giving us here, because as we pointed out, right, Angola is only 4% of OPEC's entire output, but it has left, right. Indonesia has left, Qatar has left, Ecuador has left, and we're still thinking about moving away from fossil fuel. So in that sort of scenario, does OPEC still matter?
I think OPEC's clout is beginning to come down. It's still a big name when you hear about OPEC making a move. But when you look at its, the 27% that it's actually seeing, that is producing globally, it is no longer a big player, as it were. But it's as a block, they're a big producer compared to all the other countries, the individual countries. So they have a big voice because they talk of 27% of the global production. All the others are individual countries which all need money. So when OPEC talks, people listen. But as we go into the transition period and we start moving away from the traditional oil and move into gas, then OPEC's role will begin to diminish, and gas is not yet gas hasn't got a convening organization like OPEC, and therefore the Saudis and everybody else, whilst they may be large producers, will no longer have the voice that they used to have before.
Perhaps we need to start looking forward to setting up an organization of gas exporting countries. We'll leave it there for the time being, though. Patrick Obath, an oil industry consultant, joining us there live from Kisumu.